Hi there, my name is Andy Farquharson and I'm your host on Alternative Exit,
the podcast dedicated to educating small business owners about the possibilities, benefits and challenges of transitioning to an employee ownership model. Did you know that there are over 200 million SMEs around the globe with an owner that will be retiring within the next 10 years? Many of these owners will never actually find a buyer for their business, forcing them to close their doors, wreaking havoc on their employees and the communities. There is an alternative. This show will explore different forms of employee ownership and the best practices for a successful transition. Each episode is going to feature interviews with experts on employee ownership, business owners who've successfully made the transition, and consultants who've helped facilitate these changes.
Okay, now let's get on with the show. Or Jørgensen.
Andreas Jørgensen is fine.
Okay.
I mean, that may be easier for people, international audience, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know. You decide.
Yeah. Oh, that's your name.
If you like the Pinstrup, it's fine. I'm not that.
Well, mate, we just want to. I said it's your name. I just want to make sure that we're representing it appropriately.
I will always want to be called Andreas Pinstrup Jørgensen from the Kingdom of Denmark that still owns Greenland.
Yeah.
Or has affiliation with Greenland. That's very important. You have to say that, and every time you address me, the legitimate collaborator with Greenland, maybe Denmark. Andreas Jørgensen.
It's going to be good. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Alternative Exit. So today's guest, some of you may recognize him. He may look familiar as Andreas Jørgensen, the founder of the think tank for democratic businesses over in Denmark. Now, he is a return visitor because when we were recording our episode at the Employee Ownership Association conference in the UK, we had some technical difficulties, which cut off some of the amazing conversations that we were having about like some of the fantastic news that have been happening with the launch of Denmark's own employee ownership legislation in January this year. So, Andreas, welcome back to the Alternative Exit.
Thank you so much, Andy.
Right, so for a recap of those people who perhaps didn't catch the first part of the conversation and aren't aware of what's happening in Denmark with regards to employee ownership, can you just give people a little bit of a recap as to what is the law that's come into effect from January 1?
Yeah, definitely. So just to the audience, so in Denmark, we've never actually had like a particular law that made it easier for employees to buy the company or to just like to have a vehicle for employee ownership. So this really is history in Denmark. So in December, and the law has been underway for 5-6 years. But in December, the law was the EOC, as we call it, Employee Ownership Company, was passed into law. And for the 1st of January, we got this new law that first of all creates a vehicle for employees to or for an owner to sell the company to the employees. So to create an EOC, Employee Ownership Company. The great thing, a very interesting thing, and I can, if you want, Andy, go into the more like technical details of how the law works. But first of all, just say that it's extremely interesting because what we've tried to do and what the law tries to do is to create a level playing field. And we have actually never had that in Denmark. It's always been easier to transfer the ownership of a company to family, or even sell it to some kind of stock company or an external buyer. So it has never just been on, it's never really been part of the discussion in Denmark. So this is completely new.
Okay, fantastic. Look, we'll come back to some of the more technical elements. But what I'd like to be able to do is to sort of just wind the clock back a little bit and walk through the process of how you actually sort of went about and built the coalition that enabled you to get to the point where you've now got a company structure that's viable for employee ownership.
Sure. So really, I guess, and please just hurry me up a little bit if I talk too long about the foundation of the think tank where I'm working now. So I was co-founder of the think tank for democratic businesses. We also call it the Research Institute for Democratic Businesses here in Denmark, which is really the only cooperative employee ownership focused organization in Denmark that looks into cooperative ownership and knowledge creation, actually mobilizing, getting all the cooperatives, getting them uniting. That's why we call ourselves a democratic think tank. So it's all the companies that are democratically owned that kind of like are members here. So we are member ownership, and it was created back in 2008 in April. It's kind of interesting because it was a bottom-up initiative. I was probably a little bit crazy list that wanted to kind of thought, well, I was very interested in employee ownership. I had gone to Yale University and had been extremely inspired by American thoughts on employee ownership, and brought them back to Denmark, and was, whoa, you don't have any literature, you don't have anything in this area. And slowly I started actually writing a book on employee ownership that was published in 2020. And at the same time, I was creating this organization that should kind of like unite the powers that was already there of the cooperatives. And that was very important, because if you didn't have a vehicle and an organization that could actually have some kind of like consistency and hire people to work on the topic, it was very hard to do a professional kind of work. So that's that happened in 2018. And after that, we very much we focused on, and already in the beginning, we were very focused on employee ownership, because that was really interesting. And it was also a topic we could see in the UK, in the US, also in Spain and in Italy, that was taking off. So with the publication of the book in 2020, already actually a little bit before, we put forth like suggestions on could we work on employee ownership, and spoke with a lot of different parliamentarians and it turned out that there was actually a very broad interest, both in what we in Denmark called andelsbevægelse, the cooperatives, that's the Danish word for cooperatives, the most commonly used name, and finding out that there was a great political interest and like a communality here, that we had a huge problem with generational transfer or owners that were going on pension, and we also had a problem with productivity. And at the same time, we have very, very strong unions in Denmark that are very much focused on employee satisfaction and influence in the companies. I think the labor force in Denmark is 78-80% unionized, so that's something you have a lot in Scandinavian countries. So finding out first, the politicians were interested. We didn't have any knowledge in the area, but then in 2020 I published a book that was that actually got quite an uptake, both among politicians. We sent it out to a lot of politicians, and also to a lot of the different business authority, or the ecosystem in a way. So they were more, knowledge about it, and it created kind of like a national debate also a little bit, of course, in the circle, in niches. And then we also created a strong coalition after that with first of all, politicians that were interested, business authority that at that time were like, we don't know anything about this. What is that? We are very skeptical. And they were very skeptical, both the Ministry of Business and the Business Authority. They hadn't heard a lot about this, and they were like, who are you and where are you coming from? But then we had for a few years, for the start of the think tank in 2018, we had nurtured like strong bonds to the Danish unions. And they were also trying to find new ways of exploring cooperative ownership or employee ownership. They were not really sure. For a long time in Denmark, unions have been opposed to employee ownership, as they saw themselves as a different kind of organization. They didn't want necessarily the employees to be owners. That would be a break from their original values. But that actually slowly talking into the different contexts, like having both the unions, the business authority system, having the knowledge creation, getting good contacts in the university environments. Those four were extremely important in bringing back forth legislation to make sure that it was foundational. There was good knowledge, there was interested actors in it, and there was a driving force behind it, which was the think tank, and of course us in the think tank at that point. Okay, super cool. I mean, you talked there about that coalition across business authorities, politicians, universities, and you guys at the think tank. What were the actions like? Were you guys sort of meeting together quarterly? Were you sort of just taking the role of driving, pushing everyone forward? Like, what did that actually look? Actually, sometimes you can be surprised how low level or grassroots it is. Often times it was really, for example, we would just pick up the phone and cold call people, pitch the idea and say, is this not of interest to you? Hold meetings. One of the most interesting meetings was like, I think it was 2020, where we gathered, I think it was 7 political parties along the political divide. And we sat in this room and presented the idea, and everybody nodded and was like, and we said, what if we do this and make a communal editorial, for example, or something like that we would publish together in a newspaper? And we're ready. That would be interesting. And people will all agree that this would be wonderful. We should definitely do this. And after the meeting, I remember that one of the parliamentarians came over and said, I think you just made political history. I have never been together with some on both the radical left, radical right, center parties. I've never been in a room where we could agree so much and actually look forward for a concrete political proposal that we can back up. This is really powerful. I've not seen anything like it since like the climate movement in Denmark, which is relatively strong. But even in this area, it was even more so. And he was probably right, because it turned into law.
Yeah. So what do you think? A lot of listeners to this podcast, a lot of them are believers in employee ownership, or they sort of intrinsically understand what the potential value is. But when you were in that meeting, you got those 7 different parties from across the political divide. But what is it that you were talking about as the benefits for Denmark that you think really appealed to all of them?
So in Denmark, we have, of course, this long history of cooperative spirit. Like cooperativism is very, very strong. So a company is owned by the employees, the producers, and the consumers, especially producers and consumers. So in the agricultural sector, but also financial sector with the consumers and so on. So this spirit of andelsbevægelsen is very strong, and also among all the political parties and among people. It's kind of like we have a very strong sense of spirit, a cooperative spirit, that is not the same when you go around, and that's across the political divide. This is very interesting. Yeah. So first of all, and then the other thing was that we could speak into the issues that we were facing right now. They were lacking. How can we agree on anything that both targets, and that was the big succession crises, a problem where we are losing jobs and productivity, and where local environments may lose the company because international players may go in and buy them out, or maybe even the companies are closed down because the seller doesn't really have an alternative. And that's a big issue in Denmark, and was also at that point. It still is, and it is in many other countries. The boomers are going on pension, and so that, and then thirdly, for sure, it was the question of productivity. That more and more studies actually showed that there was at least a correlation between employee ownership and higher productivity, and the race in competition with China and so on, and also with the US. How could we improve competition productivity? And lastly, probably worker welfare, which has always been a very strong focus in all of Denmark. So those 4 or 5 points were really driving, and they was like, whoa, this is a no-brainer. Let's do something together. Everybody could agree here.
That's fantastic. And did that editorial get published?
Yeah, it did. It did actually. We tried to, and this of course is a little bit hush hush, but it did. That we were very much behind that at that time. So it got published, and it was targeted to be published just before the government's budget proposals. So we knew they were in negotiations, and we made sure that it was published just around that point. And that kind of like created the last push. We already had the suggestions and talked to the business authority, Ministry of Business, the government. So they knew that they had this colossal proposal that they could put out of the drawer if they wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of coincidences. One of the most important things, I guess, if you want to get something through in politics, is it's like dedication, years and years of dedication and focus, right? It didn't just happen 1 year to the next, but always having that proposal ready, maintaining an interest from the political parties and a focus, because this was no way near like a primary political focus for the parties. This was kind of like, well, yeah, we think this is interesting. We would like to push it forward, but it won't be one of our primary aims. So also that window of opportunity was very, very much a reality that we pushed, and we did it several times, and then suddenly it went through. But over like 1.5, maybe 2 years, where we tried to get it into law in some way or another.
Yeah, I mean the timeframes that you're talking about are just amazing. So kudos to you for just like keeping that pressure on and moving that coalition forward. And you've got the law passed, which is all. Yeah, huge kudos to you. Congratulations. So
thank you.
What happens next? Okay, so you've got the law.
Yeah, we've got the law.
How are you going to raise awareness amongst amongst these companies that now there's and these owners that now there's another exit option out there for you?
Yeah. So we actually did a big study of the implementation of the British EOT that will be published here the 2nd of February, and I can probably disclose a little bit that the 3 most important conclusions was kind of how in the question of how to implement the implementation experiences for the UK, how to use those in a Danish context with the Danish EOC law. And what we really found was that there's 3 things that was extremely important, and one was creating early champions.
Yeah.
So to foster and make sure that there's some that have already gone through the process that can be more publicized and can help other business owners to dare go ahead. So the other one was nurturing an ecosystem among advisors, and that's also a very tough one in Denmark. And the last one was making sure documenting a lot how the process develops, so that we can make sure that this law is not, of course, it's not the perfect EOT law or EOC law that we could have. There will be a lot of experiences when it's implemented, and there will be a lot of problems with it, probably both in the implementation, but also how it's created law-wise. So actually revisiting it and changing it. And I think the first one thing we will focus a lot on, and that's very cool, because we actually have the opportunity to do a larger campaign and knowledge work here in the next few months. There's some very interesting initiatives that I can't say that much about right now, but that will do a lot of the same things that the EOA in the UK has done.
Great.
Where we will both make campaigns together with the business authority and the ecosystem here in Denmark, together with the trade unions, together with all the advisory institutions that we have in Denmark, to make sure that there's knowledge among the advisors and that they will present it to all the succession planners. Then we will make a targeted campaign where we actually target more directly, probably the owners that we think are more likely to uptake this kind of EOC or think about it. And we know already of course, from the UK, that professional service providers, for example, architects, and we also had quite a few of them here in Denmark. And that's part of the that actually was interested in and has contacted us through the years that would like a succession to the employees, focusing on both doing the education, the campaigning, but also really the hard work of reaching out to individual companies that are in the process or close to or already discussing. And we have 4 or 5 companies in Denmark that are working on transfer right now, and they are looking already towards the legislation. And we're really hoping to, and that will be, of course, the hard part, to help them even, to get even closer to those companies and help them succeed in the transfer. So we can use those as champions, so they can convince both owners and advisors to do the transfer. And of course, the success here will also make it easier to rectify the law and make it even better in the future.
Totally. So how did you identify those 5 champions or potential champions who are already looking at the law?
So I guess so. First of all, we're in the lucky situation that we've been here for now 7.5 years. So we've already been pushing the idea of employee ownership, and I published a book in 2020 where we got some publicity. So a lot of companies have kind of like just contacted us, cold calling, and tried to understand us. That's one. Try to get in contact with us and get help. The other one is that we are doing. We have a very thorough process of documenting democratic companies in Denmark. So if there was already companies that could be relevant for employee transfer to employees, we have like a list of companies that could be interested. So we made a small survey and got like 600 employee owners to answer, and some of those were interested in getting in contact. So there was also something a little bit there. And then, of course, the third thing is the network that we're part of, smaller cooperative organizations that are centered in the cities, often employee-owned cooperatives, worker cooperatives, and they have a great network of companies, and we're sitting in, we're a member of those organizations. So that network of knowing what's happening in the environment, those that are closest to actually thinking about transferring.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, man, a lot of great things there. I mean, even sort of when you talk about that survey, it sort of takes me back to sort of the initiative that Deb Oxley over in the UK created with the ownership dividend report.
Oh yeah.
Where they were just going through and asking, like, getting people's voice, business owners' voice, and they did this sort of great roadshow all across the country, which created a great asset. Not only which they could then share with other people. So yeah, like you're following in some great footsteps, taking those lessons and applying with the Danish context.
No, sure. We have no experience on how to do this. We are in great depth to the the EOA, Graham Noddle, Campbell. We got all these people that have helped us, and that's the only reason why I have quite a bit of optimism of that this might actually create within a few years an ownership revolution.
Okay, well, that's something we're all excited about. while we're thinking about the EOA, like also in the UK, they've obviously got the EOT, the Employee Ownership Trust. It's something that's probably reasonably familiar with a lot of listeners. How would you say that your EOC differs from the EOT or other employee-owned models that you see out there?
So there are several ways, and again, like the most important thing is here that is, I don't think that this is as advantageous necessarily as the UK was until recently with the change in the tax laws.
But for those people who don't know, like in the latest budget, the EOT used to have a relief. So any sale to an EOT was 100% exempt from paying capital gains tax. That has now been reduced in the latest budget to 50%.
Yeah. Well, the big difference with the Danish one is that you still have to pay the capital gains tax, but it's transferred to the EOC company, the employee-owned company. So the seller does not have to pay it, and that means that that in succession, in the ecosystem of succession, it will be one of the most advantageous models for the owner. But the tax is still transferred. And the other thing is that the company, so this tax has to be paid off by the EOC company, but they can do that directly with up to 8% of the total transfer value every year. When they kind of like exceed that amount, if they get paid out more from the transfer of the company of the vehicle, the mother company, then they will have to pay some of the tax. And that is an issue, a problem, and different from the British example, where it was, the tax was completely tax exempt. So we're not in that place at all. Then a little bit of a pro, perhaps, that will make it easier and may make the uptake quicker than in the UK or the EOT, is that you only have to sell 30%, 33% of the company to the employees. That the seller, the owner, we know from the Danish analysis, we don't know that much from the UK experience, but we know that sellers, owners are not really, especially when they don't know a lot. We don't have a long tradition of employee ownership in Denmark. So especially when there's not a lot of other owners that have sold their company successfully to the employees, then they will be very reticent to do it. And to make the barrier lower so they can do it on a trial base, okay, we only send 1/3 of the company instead of, as in the UK, 50%, at least 50% of the company, then the entry barrier will be lower for companies. And we actually think that will make quite a difference. Then, of course, you can criticize and say, oh, will it then be an employee-owned company ever? What we hope is that many more people will then use it, and then a substantial part of those will go all the way. And then the last way that it also differs a lot from the EOT is that the employees are really in charge. And this is perhaps a little bit too idealistic, who knows, part of this legislation. This is the Danish tradition of, democratic influence on all parameters, that the unions are interested. It was really important that the employees was the owners and in control of the EOC. So they in theory have 100% of the stakes. They are in the board of directors. Those are the ones that vote, and that could be a strength when you look at the international experiences or research on performance, at least, so that we know that the employees needs to have charge and have influence in the company to create those performance effects. So that might be a good thing. But it might also...
just to clarify that on that piece a little bit. I mean, you talked there about obviously have them being on the board, but they have 100% ownership of the EOC, which has a proportional ownership of the company. So do they have proportional representation on that company's board, or they have to be in control of that?
So they don't have to be in control of the mother company, but they have to be in control of the EOC company.
Okay, yes. Great. Yeah, fantastic. Like, is there ever? I mean, are they in power to be able to sell the company? So say, for example, they own 100%, the EOC owns 100% of the company. Like, are they able to make a decision to sell that as the owner?
In theory, they can, but it's relatively difficult because they have you don't have individual ownership. It's similar to the British EOT. So everybody has the same ownership, and when new people come in, you don't earn like ownership share. So the individual incentive to selling the company is much lower, and of course you have to have a majority of all the workers that agree to sell the company. But it can be done, and that's also a part of an important part of the business landscape in Denmark, and to have that these companies should also be able to sell themselves. But our experience, and also from the international examples, is that it rarely happens. But of course, it will happen with the very valuable companies, and maybe that's okay to create some kind of flexibility in the business environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely some of the growth that we're seeing in terms of employee ownership in the States is employee-owned companies being acquisitive and buying other companies rather than looking to sell the other way around. So, but one of the big drivers of that is the availability of capital for employee-owned companies, which is not as strong, say, in the UK. So, is that something that you're looking at as an additional funding source for these sort of types of acquisitions? And are you working with local financial institutions?
Very much so. You asked to the campaigning, or did we do any outreach? So this is a different track on our work, and this has actually been part of our work for the last 2 years. So it's not something that's just starting now.
Yeah.
So we're in contact with at least 5 financial institutions on making it either creating guarantees for. So that may be from some of the state sponsored funds that may be able to actually give guarantees on the loan, or part guarantees. So it makes it easier for the banks to actually loan money for the transfer. Then we're also in contact with financial institutions, as particular banks that are very interested in this opportunity, and they have already decided on a strategic level to focus on this and to educate their to be able to loan money for this for these companies. So that will be a huge advantage for sure for us. And then thirdly, we also actually are looking into, can we have some more? Earlier, we actually tried to create an investment fund, a democratic investment fund here in Denmark. And we do have some altruistic foundations in Denmark that might be interested in going into this and create more like a kind of investment vehicle. That will be a little bit down the road. But it is possible and something we're looking into.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, there's definitely I guess a lack of those types of funds over here on this side of the Atlantic. A lot more, a growing number over in the US. So yeah, it's super exciting to sort of look at those opportunities. And I think the way that you're sort of looking to approach the finance, it's got echoes to how the Canadians were doing it. I was speaking with Tiara Letourneau on the podcast. Like, she was talking about how one of their members of their sort of employee ownership association was actually sort of in charge of the debt, one of the larger banks. And so we're able to sort of go lead those conversations, which was awesome. So you guys are on that path as well.
Very cool.
Very cool. So mate, this has been amazing. Great getting through all the detail of which we missed on our last call, but also giving us an awesome update of where you are at today and what's next, which is definitely some exciting things to come. But before we go, I always ask our guests a fast round of questions where I just offer you these 3 quick questions and you offer a quick response. How does that sound?
Sure. Ready?
Okay. Who's a leader that you most admire in employee ownership?
Graham Nuttall.
An easy win. He gets brought up by lots of folk. Okay, so what is your favorite resource on employee ownership?
So my most favorite, it's probably been the work that touched me the most. 2 things: White and White, Making One Dragon. Yeah. I don't know if you know, the brilliant book, very well written. I really like it. It was written in the 70s, crazy. The second one is by Blasey, Richard Freeman, and I think it's called The Citizen Share. Yeah, it was a book published in 2013, I think. It was a very good, very important part of like getting all the research together and easy accessible for decision makers. And so that was an important one. Those 2.
Okay. I actually haven't read The Citizen Share, so that's definitely one for me.
Oh, you should definitely.
Definitely read that one. Okay. So, and then lastly, what would you say to a business owner who's sitting on the fence regarding a transition to employee ownership?
So probably I would say you have an opportunity to make history. This is a way to preserve your legacy. This is a way to, put your name for real into the annals of history by turning your company over to the employees. And that will even make your company more stable in the future. You will be sure that no external actors are breaking it apart, selling it to foreign countries. It will, or at least that's our experience in the area, it will be more localized, and it will have a higher degree of survival than other companies.
That's awesome. A great recap, delivered with your energy and enthusiasm as always, giving people an opportunity to make history. Always a good sales pitch. Andreas, There's obviously so much going on for you guys over there, sort of coming off the back of this sort of law coming into effect. Where can people go to follow your story and support you?
So they can definitely follow us on LinkedIn, and they can also go to our webpage. Well, it's actually in Danish, it's called Tænketanken Demokratisk Erhverv, but we'll also start publishing a little bit in English. But I think LinkedIn is a good place to follow us for sure. I would do there.
Fantastic. We'll put some links in the show notes. Andreas, thank you for leading the way for many other countries who are looking to adopt employee ownership. I think you've sort of, every country has a different, unique approach that's sort of taken to the local flavour. You've done, shown us a great example to get to where we are with a Danish context that I think we could all learn from. Thank you very much for your time, sharing your thoughts, and for joining us on the Alternative Exit.
And thank you, Andy, for your huge dedication to the course.
Cheers, mate. Have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to continue learning about employee ownership as an alternative exit, head across to abettermonday.me for additional links and resources. You can also make sure to subscribe or follow along in your favorite podcast app, and be sure to leave us a 5-star review.